Welcome everyone. They can't believe that it's all happening on a phone.
Yeah, and all those 80 people.
Thank you very much for joining us on Facebook Live for this wonderful opportunity for the next 15 minutes to get as many questions as you guys have already submitted to these wonderful people for this wonderful film, which I want to say congratulations on straight away. It's fabulous. I've been lucky enough to see it. I'm going to get straight in because we are short on time. I guess for the three of you first was just to kind of check, and someone says, what was it like coming back after 20 years to these roles? Who wants to start with that? Johnny.
Oh, hey! I mean, it's a lot of things. It's nerve-wracking. It's scary. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to, not just come back to the role, but to do that working with the same people and the people that you care deeply about, and on a project that you care deeply about that means something so much to you. So it's weird and surreal and scary and wonderful, I think is probably the way to sum it up.
What he said.
That's the one and only time you're allowed to say that.
Okay.
Do you want to add to that?
It was great. It was sort of like coming home or meeting meeting an old friend, and in our case, friends from the past. And there was a great deal of worry about, like, is what made me renting in '95 still in me to make me renting now? And the answer to that question was only going to be discovered on set with the guys and Danny, and he was, thank God. I felt like him, and as we went on, I felt more and more like him, and there was funny little memories of the first film that appeared out of nowhere. Like I was saying, like when I crawl up into there's a scene where I go up into the attic at the end, and I push up on these rafters, and as I went up, it just reminded me of coming out the toilet. It was like a physical memory of it,
It was weird. And Bobby was just saying about like when you hug, when you discover that you've got 100 grand, and you all hug, it's the exact same image as when you all did the drug deal in the first film. And the decor was the same.
Suddenly seen it, I thought it looked the same. All looked the same. I was like, that's bizarre. I wonder whether he'd done it deliberately, which he didn't.
I'm claiming to now.
The freeze frame, though, right?
Yeah,
because
the freeze frame.
The freeze frame helps it.
The laugh in the windscreen of the car, I don't think that was scripted, was it?
No.
Was it
just
not?
happened. No, it just happened. Because I ended up on the deck, and you have to get up, and then there's the guy in the car, and I went forward, and it just sort of came out of its own accord. It's fun.
What lovely, wonderful accidents.
Yeah.
But Danny, for you as well, I mean, a question you've been asked over the years again and again, when are we getting a sequel? When are we getting a sequel? And now we have one. But for you, going back to make that and to revisit that story, what was it like for you?
It was just really about getting the script right, really. So this guy, John Hodge, wrote the original script based on Irvin's book, and we tried a couple of times and it hadn't really worked, we've been honest. And it was good that the quality threshold, you still recognised it, because it can disappear in your life. We all know that danger, it's like, oh God. But it was, when he delivered it, it was like, I knew these four, Ewan Brenner's not here, but I knew they'd do it. I just knew instinctively. It was just an instinct. I thought, I'll send it to them and they'll do it. And whatever the problems are, we'll just clear them away and we'll do it. And we did. And it's because you just recognise there's enough. What's incredible at the script is there's enough in it for all four of them. Movies never involve four leading characters. They involve one or two. Or they're a huge group thing, with 20 characters or whatever. But this was like, the focus was very, very pure on all four of them, constantly. And I have to say, about them putting on these overcoats again and stepping into these shoes again, they were bursting with energy to do it. I was shocked when we started the scenes. It was like, oh right, okay, I'm going to have to be on my best behaviour now, because it's like, they were really up for it. They didn't want to hang around, they wanted to get into it.
Yeah.
And that appetite was wonderful to witness,
How many times did you have to run up Arthur's seat?
Well, we didn't run up it very much.
The hill in Scotland.
Yeah,
Not-
sorry. Yeah.
Not a chap that we work with.
But we did. But in my off time, that's what I did. I love that. Edinburgh's an amazing time. We didn't shoot the first film in Edinburgh. We shot it in Glasgow, and we had a couple of days in Edinburgh. But this one we shot mainly in Edinburgh. And it's much more of a character in the movie than it was in the first film, and that meant working there and having your time off and your days off there, which was lovely for me. And that Arthur Seat, that park that we run up with Spud is sort of what I did on my days off. You know, I love running, and Johnny's an amazing runner, and re-inspired me to run further and for longer than I ever had done before while we were doing this film. So that was really my off time.
Wow, amazing. What were the biggest differences between filming the two movies? Someone's asked.
Well, everybody was our friend this time round. Everybody was like, "Oh, you want to come in and film this? No problem." And you come on, you go. Whereas the first time they weren't quite so keen with these bunch of vagabonds running around town. So it was great actually. The love of the first film is something that you obviously can't anticipate, and all of us have benefited from it. The love they have of these four characters and of the film is amazing, and especially in Edinburgh itself, you know. And that all goes back to the writer, Irving Welsh, actually. The stories originate in that town, that's where they come from. They're based on people that he clearly knew, or amalgams of people. And it's wonderful to go back there and pay respect to the town and say, thank you for everything you've done for us, and here's our second goal.
You said a lovely thing the other night at the premiere, which was, it's lovely to think that there's maybe someone in the audience who was maybe 20 when they saw the first film, and they're now sat there with their 20-year-old son or daughter, and this whole new world being introduced to a new generation as well. That's lovely. And the next question kind of follows on from that. Why do you think these movies resonate with audiences so well? What is it about them, do you think, Robert?
I think that maybe the time when the first one came out was such a kind of an amazing time. You know, we had in the country, we had been through 100 years of Conservative rule. There was a new Labour government, and there was a kind of an explosion of culture at that time, in music and in film and arts all around. And we were, it even had a name. They called it Britpop, and we were fortunate enough to be kind of right in the middle of that. So people look back in that time with it's not about rose tinted specs. It was a great time, you know. And I think the idea of a bit of nostalgia for that time is a nice thing. It's a good thing.
I think something that really resonates with people as well is the fact that, the hero of the first movie, does a very unheroic thing at the end of it. And I think, essentially it's about groups of people and their friendships, their interactions. It's about a group of friends and about the mistakes that they make within those friendships, as well as the victories they have within those friendships. And everyone can relate to that. So there's not really a plot to Trainspotting. There's no plot. There's a bit of a deal at the end. And there's no plot. It's not like a three-act thing at all. And it's about that's it. So it's about everything else in between. And it was honest in that respect. The writing's honest. Renton makes a decision for himself and fucks off. So people can relate to that. Everyone knows. Everyone's let someone down. Everyone's had someone let them down. And everybody's look for redemption amongst their group of friends or stuff like that. So I think that's relatable.
It's wonderful to see in this film those moments where when every character's reunited, you feel that kind of anxiety and almost kind of little sick feeling yourself as a fan watching it, kind of going, what's their reaction going to be when they see each other the first time? There's so much commitment in fans of the film with those characters. It's physical. It's incredible.
There's extraordinary scenes where Renton meets Spud for the first time, and then which is an extraordinary scene at the top of a tower block.
Yeah, that's
and then Renton and Sick Boy get together in this pub and they have this fight. It's it's difficult to watch even now. It involves iron brew and all sorts of things. And then the final character to be introduced is Begbie meets Simon, Sick Boy, underneath the pub. And that was the first scene that we shot, actually. That was our first day. And that was an extraordinary experience, seeing these two go at it with each other like that. And I knew we were going to be okay once they started working together.
Yeah.
Once the film brings them together.
We've got some questions for you individually. This one's for you first, Danny. Danny, how have you grown as a director since the first film?
You get worse as a director. It's honestly, and you get technically better, and you get awards and things like that. But you're not any better really. Because there's an innocence when you first start that it's always precious, that where you don't know what you're doing, and you look at a bunch of actors and say, what should we do? Well, should we do this? Yeah, all right. And that trembling kind of ecstasy you never ever get back quite, but you try to. So we tried to.
Johnny, how has Sick Boy's priorities shifted since the first film?
Oh goodness, his priorities, I don't know. I think his priorities might be the same. He just hasn't really, they haven't shifted perhaps, and that's the problem, I think, for him. I think he's still chasing the same things that he was chasing towards the end of the film. He becomes a darker character once his baby dies, and that sort of does something to him. But I think his priorities, that's really one of the things I was keen to accentuate, and that I thought was great about the story, is that he's really sort of stuck in a rut, and that's turned him quite bitter and frustrated person, you know, because he hasn't addressed his priorities, perhaps.
Must have been wonderful as actors to know that this script was coming to you, and in your head kind of go, God, what he's done. I wonder where he's been. What's he been doing? You know, these characters.
It was great, yeah. It was brilliant. I remember reading it for the first time. It was like a Christmas present, 100 Christmas presents.
You know, I was talking to Sarah, the characters had never ever really went away. You know what I mean? Because I can tell, you know, almost weekly for the last 20 years, someone somewhere has come up to me and said, baby. So he's there, he's always been there. And I've always kind of thought, I wonder where he is. And of course he's in the prison. It's exactly where he should be.
That's Her Majesty's pleasure.
Yeah,
Of course he comes out looking like Manny from Robert Begbie's a very passionate character. How do you get in the mindset for a role like that?
Well, I mean,
I like the word passionate as well. They've used to
sure.
describe it.
Well, I mean, I guess as an actor, you know, when you're younger, then you tend to be a bit kind of observational kind of actor. You kind of look at things and think, oh, I'll use that or I'll use this. But as you get older, I think you kind of tend to do less of that, and it becomes more about, you know, try to feel the character's pain or try to feel the character's rage. And of course you have sort of much more life experience that you can draw on to do that. So that's kind of how you get there.
Ewan, how has the Choose Life speech evolved, someone says?
Well, it's very different in this film because it's in a scene. I'm saying it to somebody, and in the first film it was an internal thought, it was a voiceover, and of course it became really iconically linked to the movie, and people have it on their walls and t-shirts and stuff. So when I knew that it was in there, I was very excited that I would get a chance to do it for reals. And there's a nice thing is that I was the only person that got it in my script. Everyone else's script had a fake scene in there, and because it was we were worried about it getting out.
Yeah.
So I had it on a piece of paper, and the other thing about it is that it's very, very. I think there's an awful lot of John Hodge in it, a very personal and intimate version of his thoughts about things, and I recognised that in it, and I thought it was very special as a result. So I set about learning it absolutely because it was also like a beautiful poem. It had to be said as it was written. There was one thing we dropped into it, which was when we'd already started the film, there was the illegal highs and legal high shops were made illegals.
Yes.
And we thought that was Danny thought that that's something that Renton would certainly be in his sort of consciousness, and he would mention it. So we dropped in a line about that, taking an unknown dose of an unknown drug made in somebody's kitchen. And other than that, it's exactly as John wrote it. And I learnt it up on Arthur's Seat, the mountain that Edinburgh's built around, because I thought it was a great place to. It's a great place to wander around, and you can find a place where you're alone, even though it's a quite popular place. And I would walk up and down the hill with this going. And I was walking around, and it was awful windy up there. And I thought, God, imagine if every day I was holding on to it so hard.
Someone's walking around.
Because it was so important when it didn't get leaked.
Was that quite a difficult thing, keeping, you know, everyone knew you were filming it, everyone knew it was going on, because so much of it's kind of, you know, out in public, a lot of it, in terms of where it's filmed, but in terms of, you know, keeping the storyline and the structure, you know, private and secret until the film's kind of put together, was that quite hard?
No, they were really good people. We made that case that you've just said, really, about how hard this is going to be to keep it secret, and you have to trust people. You have to say, please help us do that, and don't talk to people about what we're doing and stuff like that. There was an odd moment, because we were on top of this tower block. There's a bit, I'm not giving too much away, but Spud falls off this tower block at one point, and we were on this tower block setting it up as a scene, and there was a guy on the other tower block watching us out of his top window. and he's just like, he shouted across, "You're not killing Spud, are you?" Like that, the top of his voice, and he kind of worked it out. Was this what was going on here, like this? And we said, "Don't tell anyone anything." And he was great. He never mentioned it to anyone. So.
That's brilliant.
We don't kill off Spud.
What were you going to say, Joey?
Danny addresses, if you ever have a large group of people or extras and stuff, you know, large, and Danny talks to them, you know, addresses them, and really, in a way I've never ever seen anybody sort of take as much time or care to explain what we're doing and to make a large group of people feel a part of, and that's, you know, it's really cool to watch. And so he does get people's trust, and they feel like they're a part of the movie, like the nightclub scene. You know, everyone was really into it, and they were buzzing that they were there. But then they feel even more a part of it because Danny's explained he wants them to, and so you'd be amazed. Yeah, people will, you know, keep that secret if you ask them to. Yeah.
Respect invites respect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Meryl Streep said at the Women's March: disrespect invites disrespect, and the opposite is true. Absolutely.
Last question, which is such an important part of both Trainspotting 1 and 2, the music. It's wicked. So good. You know, you hear those songs, like even, you know, you hear Lost for Life, Iggy Pop, and you go, the first thing I see in my head, as I'm sure so many other people do, and you think of, is Trainspotting. You don't think of Iggy Pop, you think of Trainspotting.
I think
it's
that
an
the
incredible
music
thing.
for this film is I mean, it even surpasses the soundtrack for the first film, in my opinion. And the first film, where it was what we call a needle drop, so it's like tracks that come in, and it was kind of obvious that was what was happening. But this time round, I think, obviously with the exception of the Blondie track or the Queen and stuff like that, stuff we know, the kind of the more modern music that's in it, it almost seems to be like part of the fabric of the film. It's almost like a score, so it kind of elevates it even to a tremendous height. I think, a beautiful soundtrack.
You have to give it up for. I mean, Rick Smith, who is part of Underworld, and obviously he rethought Born Slippy for it and did incidental music, but we found this band, I mean, people know about them, Young Fathers, but we discovered them, not discovered them, but learnt about them, and their music is, you could have used almost any of their tracks in it, and that made me think, why is that? Because it's so difficult to fit music sometimes, and it's because, of course, they come from Edinburgh, and from the same areas that Irving was writing about originally 30 years ago. It's the same energy as producing, creative energies producing that. They were wonderful. They came on set, you had a look at the sets, they weren't that impressed. And I thought, oh God, I've made a very good impression. And they said, oh no, it's all right, yeah, okay, yeah, you can use the music. And then a few days later they sent us a new track called Only God Knows, which we finished the film with. It's a wonderful track. And they were a guard for us against too much nostalgia. The modern world speaking as well through these guys.
We've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time. It's so lovely to get in. Thank you guys for your questions as well. It's going to be in theatres in the States from March, so go and see it when it comes out because you will not be disappointed. Danny, Robert, Johnny and you, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks everyone.